Are 56. The amendment is not agreed to. Without objection, so ordered.
Mr. President.
Senator from Colorado is recognized.
Mr. President, I want to call up my amendment 2295.
Clerk will report.
The senator from Colorado, Mr. Udall, proposes an amendment number 2295.
2 minutes of debate. The senator from Colorado is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, I've offered this amendment along with my colleague, Senator Thune from South Dakota. It's a common-sense amendment that would increase resources to land managers to address insect and disease epidemics that are spreading across our forests while maintaining, and this is an important point, the Farm Bill's more than $23 billion in mandatory savings. This epidemic, which is in many, many states, has left dangerous and dying stands of trees that worsen the threat from forest fires. This is particularly evident in my home state of Colorado as we stand here today. We have an 86-square-mile fire. More than 1,600 brave firefighters are challenging this blaze. It's also already the most destructive in Colorado history. We've lost hundreds of homes, and we won't fully bring this fire to ground for a number of additional weeks. The Forest Service, Mr. President, has a goal of doubling the amount of acres they want to treat next year. This would help them reach that goal. If we don't pass the amendment, they won't have the wherewithal and the resources to do so. So I'd ask my colleagues to support this bipartisan amendment.
The senator's time has expired. Who yields time in opposition? Who yields time in opposition? Senator from Kansas.
Mr. President, I'm not going to speak in opposition to the amendment, but I do want the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Burr, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell, Mr. Cardin, Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. DeMint, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken. Mrs. Gillibrand. Mr. Graham. Mr. Grassley. Mrs. Hagan. Mr. Harkin. Mr. Hatch. Mr. Heller. Mr. Hoven. Mrs. Hutchison. Mr. Inhofe. Mr. Inouye. Mr. Isaacson. Mr. Johans. Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin. Mr. Johnson of South Dakota. Mr. Kerry. Mr. Kirk. Ms. Klobuchar. Mr. Cole. Mr. Kyle. Ms. Landrieu. Mr. Lautenberg. Mr. Leahy. Mr. Lee. Mr. Levin. Mr. Lieberman. Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Chester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Akaka, Baucus, Begich, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Blunt, Bozeman, Boxer, Brown of Ohio, Cardin, Coburn, Cochran, Conrad, Coons, Crapo, Durbin, Enzi, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Graham, Hagan, Harkin, Hoven, Inouye, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Cole, Lautenberg, Leahy, Lugar, Manchin, McCain, Merkley, Mikulski, Murkowski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Risch, Roberts, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schumer, Shelby, Stabenow, Thune, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Whitehouse, Wicker. Senators voting in the negative: Ayotte, Brown of Massachusetts, Burr, Chambliss, Coates, Cornyn, Hatch, Inhofe, Johnson of Wisconsin, Lee, Moran, Paul, Toomey, Wyden. Mr. Rubio, no. Mr. Vitter, no. Mr. Portman, no. Ms. Landrieu, aye. Ms. Collins, aye. Mr. Bennett, aye. Mrs. Shaheen, aye. Mr. Lieberman, aye. Mr. Casey, aye. Mr. Levin, aye. Mr. Menendez, aye. Mr. Tester, aye. Mr. Barrasso, aye. Mr. Kyle, aye. Mrs. McCaskill, no. Mr. Heller, aye. Ms. Klobuchar, aye. Mr. Webb, aye. Mr. Sessions, aye. Ms. Snow, aye. Mr. Grassley, no. Mrs. Gillibrand, aye. Mr. Corker, no. Mr. Carper, aye. Mr. Carey, aye. Ms. Hutchison, no. Mr. Dement, no. Mr. Pryor, aye. Ms. Cantwell, aye. Mr. Alexander, aye. Mr. McConnell, aye.
Is there any senator chamber wishes to vote or change their vote? If not, the ayes are 77, the nays are 22. The amendment is adopted.
Mr. President,
Senator from Utah is recognized.
I call up my amendment number 2313.
The clerk will report the amendment.
The senator from Utah, Mr. Lee, proposes an amendment number 2313.
There will now be 2 minutes of debate. The senator from Utah is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, I've introduced this amendment to repeal the Forest Legacy Program. This is a program that is designed to protect lands in the United States of America. Now, it's important to remember that the federal government is already a massive landowner, and it has abundant programs already in place to try to conserve that land, to protect it. The federal government owns about 2/3 of the land in my own state. It owns nearly 30% of the land mass within the territorial boundaries of the United States of America. We do a lot to conserve that land, but when we use this money estimated to amount to about $200 million a year, in authorization about $1 billion over a 5-year period. We're using that money to take land out of use. We're using that money to pay people not to use their land for anything. Whenever we look for areas in which we could save, one area where we should save is to pay people not to use their land.
Senator, time has expired. Who yields in opposition?
Well, Mr. President,
The senator from Vermont.
Mr. President, I strongly disagree. This legacy program affects almost every one of us in our states for more than 2 decades. It's led to the conservation of 2.2 million acres of forest land in 49 states. The National Association of Forest Owners estimates this supports more than 2.9 million jobs, contributes $115 billion annually to the gross domestic product, and doesn't use taxpayers' dollars. It takes a small percentage of oil drilling receipts for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. You know, our forests are under attack by real estate development and others. We really need this. We're going to lose up to 75 million acres of forest over the next half-century. This at least allows us to make sure the forests we keep are not fragmented. Every single senator in this body benefits from this program.
The senator's time has expired. The question is on Amendment 2313.
I call for the ayes and nays.
Is there sufficient second? There appears to be. The clerk will call the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander, Ms. Ayotte, Mr. Barrasso, Mr. Baucus, Mr. Begich, Mr. Bennett, Mr. Bingaman, Mr. Blumenthal, Mr. Blunt, Mr. Bozeman, Mrs. Boxer, Mr. Brown of Massachusetts, Mr. Brown of Ohio, Mr. Burr, Mr. Burr, Ms. Cantwell,
You've got a letter in your office. Probably somebody on my staff may take pretty valuable.
Mr. Cardin,
Thanks for doing it.
Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn,
Yeah, we
Mr. Cochran. Ms. Collins. Mr. Conrad. Mr. Coons. Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. DeMint, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden. Senators voting in the affirmative: Barrasso, Coates, Coburn, Cornyn, DeMint, Enzi, Hatch, Inhofe, Johans, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lee, McCain, Moran, Murkowski, Paul, Rubio, Toomey, Vitter. Senators voting in the negative: Akaka, Ayotte, Begich, Bennett, Bingaman, Bozeman, Brown of Massachusetts, Burr, Cardin, Casey, Chambliss, Cochran, Collins, Conrad, Coons, Corker, Feinstein, Gillibrand, Graham, Hagan, Harkin, Peller, Hoeven, Hutchison, Isaacson, Johnson of South Dakota, Klobuchar, Cole, Lautenberg, Leahy, Levin, Lieberman, Lugar, McCaskill, Menendez, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Pryor, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Roberts, Rockefeller, Sanders, Schumer, Shaheen, Shelby, Stabenow, Tester, Udall of Colorado, Udall of New Mexico, Warner, Webb, Whitehouse, Wyden. Mr. Kerry, no. Mr. Franken, no. Mr. Brown of Ohio, no. Mr. Blumenthal, no. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Inouye, no. Mr. Portman, no. Mr. Grassley, no. Mr. Durbin, no. Ms. Snow, no. Mr. Alexander, no. Mr. Blunt, aye. Mr. Thune, no. Ms. Landrieu, no. Mr. Wicker, no. Mr. Carper, no. Mr. Manchin, no. Mrs. Murray, no. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Baucus, no. Mr. Sessions, no. Mrs. Boxer, no. Mr. McConnell, aye.
Is there any senator in the chamber who wishes to vote or change their vote? If not, the ayes are 21, the nays are 77. The amendment is not agreed to.
Move to reconsider. Delay table.
Without objection. Majority Leader is recognized. Could I ask everyone's cooperation? Senators, please take their seats. Senators, please take their seats.
Mr. President,
Majority Leader.
Right now, we have 34 amendments left, plus final passage. That's 11 hours. Now, I was hoping we could dispose of quite a few of these on voice, but that hasn't worked out very well. We've had a number of people who've offered to have their votes by voice, but those are objected to. Now, we have to finish this bill. We have to do flood insurance this week. And I know people have schedules. We have all kinds of things going on. But we have to show a little bit of understanding about the ordeal we have ahead of us. Now, I'm confident that we're not going to stay here until 2 o'clock this morning, but we're going to stay here a while, because until we have a way of finishing this bill that is set in stone, we're going to have to proceed forward on this. This is an important piece of legislation, but also flood insurance is an extremely important piece of legislation. If we don't complete that by the end of this month, there will be thousands and thousands of people who cannot close their loans every day. Not a month, every day. With the economy and the state that it's in now, we need to close every loan, every home that's purchased, every commercial piece of property that's bought. We have to close those now. We can't tell the American people, well, we tried to get it done, but we couldn't because we were whatever. So people have indicated they want to get out here early tonight. There may be somebody that wants to get out here earlier tonight, more than I, but I would be happy to debate that subject with them. But, Mr. President, we need to show some cooperation here. We have two of the finest senators we could have managing this bill. Let's work together and get this done.
Mr. President.
Senator for Virginia.
Mr. President, I ask to call up amendment number 2457 and ask the clerk to report by number.
Clerk will report the amendment.
The Senator from Virginia, Mr. Warner, proposes amendment number 2457.
I further ask that the amendment be modified with the changes at the desk.
Is there objection? Without objection, so ordered. There will be 2 minutes of debate. Senator for Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, this is a broad bipartisan amendment. Warner, Crapo, Kirk, Shaheen, Bennett, Webb. It basically does 3 things within the broadband area. It accelerates access to those areas that are underserved. Matter of fact, we have a 2009 USDA IGA report that showed that less than 3% of loans provided by RUS went toward unserved communities. This will move forward in that area. Second, it creates greater access and transparency. These were items that were brought forward from the GAO and the IGA at the USDA and CRS. Third, it also allows greater levels of accountability in ensuring that those states that collect data by address, that information is relayed to RUS, so we don't have counties where a certain part of the county is served and other parts of the county are left unserved, never being able to get access to these loans. It has broad support of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops, National Taxpayers Unions, and the League of Rural Voters. I'd ask bipartisan support of this amendment.
Who yields time in opposition?
Mr.
Senator
President,
from Michigan.
I'm not yielding time in opposition. I want to commend Senator Warner and everyone on this amendment for a tremendous amount of work. It's a bipartisan amendment. It makes a tremendous amount of sense. It's real reform, and I believe we have an understanding to proceed with a voice vote on this amendment.
Questions on the adoption of Amendment 2457. If there is no further debate, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, nay.
Nay.
The ayes appear to have it. The ayes have it. The amendment is adopted.
Mr. President.
As modified.
Mr. President.
Senator from Alaska.
I would like to have the record reflect that if there had been a roll call vote, I would have voted no on this item.
Well, that's good.
Mr. President, I would like to also be recorded as would have voted no if there had been a roll call vote.
Mr. President.
Senator from Utah is recognized.
Mr. President, I call up my amendment number 2314, which is at the desk.
The clerk will report the amendment.
The Senator from Utah, Mr. Lee, proposes amendment number 2314.
There will be 2 minutes of debate. The Senator of Utah is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. President, I propose this amendment number 2314 to repeal and eliminate the Conservation Reserve Program and the Conservation Stewardship Program. Here yet again we have another instance of the federal government paying people not to use their land. In this circumstance, They're being paid not to grow crops on their land, not to use agricultural land. We have an almost $16 trillion debt. CBO says that this amendment would save over $15 billion in mandatory spending over 10 years. Not doing something is something that should be free. Only the federal government would try to defend the practice of spending billions and billions of dollars.
The senator will suspend for one moment. We're having a hard time hearing the senator. Please, if the members would cooperate, take the conversations out of the well. Senator from Utah is recognized.
Only the federal government would try to defend the barbaric, the outmoded practice of paying people billions and billions of dollars not to use their land. That's what these programs do. We need to get rid of them. That's why I propose this amendment. I invite my colleagues to join me in supporting it.
Who yields time in opposition?
Mr. President.
Senator from Michigan.
Mr. President, I strongly oppose this amendment. We have over 643 conservation and environmental groups supporting our conservation reforms in this bill from every state in the Union. You know, this is about protecting land and water and air, habitat, wetlands. Ducks Unlimited are a huge supporter of what we've been doing. And let me just say that the Conservation Reserve Program, which has been in place for 25 years, was shown last year with the drought to have had a tremendous effect. We saw some of the worst droughts on record since the Dust Bowl in the last number of months, but yet we didn't have another Dust Bowl, and that's because the CRP prevented erosion and the soil stayed where it should stay. This is about our country protecting our land resources for our children and our grandchildren. I would strongly urge a no vote.
Question is on Amendment 2314. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Noes appear to have it. The noes have it. Senator from Utah. Is there a sufficient second? At this moment, there is not a sufficient second. Is there a sufficient second? There appears to be the roll.
Mr. Akaka, Mr. Alexander. Ms. Ayotte.
Aye.
Mr. Barrasso.
Okay. Here's as modified. As modified. Amendment.
Yes.
Mr. Baucus. Mr. Begich. Mr. Bennett. Mr. Bingaman. Mr. Blumenthal. Mr. Blunt. Mr. Bozeman. Mrs. Boxer.
Yeah, they're right here.
Mr. Brown of Massachusetts. Mr. Brown of Ohio. Mr. Burr. Ms. Cantwell. Mr. Cardin. Mr. Carper, Mr. Casey, Mr. Chambliss, Mr. Coates, Mr. Coburn, Mr. Cochran, Ms. Collins, Mr. Conrad, Mr. Coons, Mr. Corker, Mr. Cornyn, Mr. Crapo, Mr. DeMint, Mr. Durbin, Mr. Enzi, Mrs. Feinstein, Mr. Franken, Mrs. Gillibrand, Mr. Graham, Mr. Grassley, Mrs. Hagan, Mr. Harkin, Mr. Hatch, Mr. Heller, Mr. Hoven, Mrs. Hutchison, Mr. Inhofe, Mr. Inouye, Mr. Isaacson, Mr. Johans, Mr. Johnson of Wisconsin, Mr. Johnson of South Dakota, Mr. Kerry, Mr. Kirk, Ms. Klobuchar, Mr. Cole, Mr. Kyle, Ms. Landrieu, Mr. Lautenberg, Mr. Leahy, Mr. Lee, Mr. Levin, Mr. Lieberman, Mr. Lugar, Mr. Manchin, Mr. McCain, Mrs. McCaskill, Mr. McConnell, Mr. Menendez, Mr. Merkley, Ms. Mikulski, Mr. Moran, Ms. Murkowski, Mrs. Murray, Mr. Nelson of Nebraska, Mr. Nelson of Florida, Mr. Paul, Mr. Portman, Mr. Pryor, Mr. Reed of Rhode Island, Mr. Reed of Nevada, Mr. Risch, Mr. Roberts, Mr. Rockefeller, Mr. Rubio, Mr. Sanders, Mr. Schumer, Mr. Sessions, Mrs. Shaheen, Mr. Shelby, Ms. Snow, Ms. Stabenow, Mr. Tester, Mr. Thune, Mr. Toomey, Mr. Udall of Colorado, Mr. Udall of New Mexico, Mr. Vitter, Mr. Warner, Mr. Webb, Mr. Whitehouse, Mr. Wicker, Mr. Wyden, Senators voting in the affirmative: Hatch, Johnson of Wisconsin, Kyle, Lee, McCain, Murkowski, Paul, Toomey. Senators voting in the negative: Alexander, Begich, Bingaman, Blumenthal, Boxer, Brown of Massachusetts, Burr, Cardin, Casey, Cochran, Collins, Coons, Cornyn, Durbin, Enzi, Feinstein, Franken, Gillibrand, Grassley, Hagan, Harkin, Heller, Inhofe, Inouye, Isaacson, Johans, Johnson of South Dakota, Kerry, Cole, Lautenberg, Leahy, Lugar, Manchin, McCaskill, McConnell, Mikulski, Murray, Nelson of Nebraska, Nelson of Florida, Portman, Reed of Rhode Island, Reed of Nevada, Roberts, Rockefeller, Schumer, Sessions, Stabenow, Tester, Udall of Colorado, Warner, Whitehouse, Wicker, Wyden. Ms. Klobuchar, no. Mrs. Shaheen, no. Mr. Sanders, no. Mr. DeMint, aye. Mr. Bennett, no. Mr. Blunt, no. Mr. Pryor, no. Mr. Akaka, no. Mr. Levin, no. Ms. Ayotte, aye. Mr. Conrad, no. Mr. Moran, no. Mr. Coburn, aye. Mr. Coates, aye. Mr. Udall of New Mexico, no. Mr. Thune, no. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mr. Webb, no. Mr. Carper, no. Ms. Landrieu, no. Mr. Rubio, aye. Ms. Cantwell, no. Mr. Bozeman, no. Mr. Menendez, Mr. Menendez, no. Mr. Hoven, no. Mr. Lieberman, no. Mrs. Hutchison, no. Ms. Snow, no. Mr. Merkley, no. Mr. Baucus, no. Mr. Crapo, no. Mr. Shelby, no. Mr. Graham, no. Mr. Vitter, aye. Mr. Risch, no. Mr. Chambliss, no. Mr. Corker, aye. Mr. Brown of Ohio, no.
Are there any other senators wishing to vote or to change their vote? Seeing none, the yeas are 15, the nays are 84. The amendment fails.
Mr. President,
Senator from Michigan.
thank you. Move to reconsider and lay it on the table.